I'm coming home, baby. I'm coming home, baby. I'm coming home, baby, now. I'm coming home now, right away. I'm coming home, baby, now. I'm sorry now I ever went away. Every night and day I go and say, I'm coming home, I'm coming home.
Welcome to Piedmont Housing Alliance, a series of discussions on building dreams and creating wealth. My name is Karen Reifenberger, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. Piedmont Housing Alliance produces this series of discussions on topics related to its mission. PHA is a regional nonprofit organization with a mission to create housing and community development opportunities for very low to moderate income families and individuals, teach financial literacy and money management, home buying and home ownership skills, and advocate for affordable housing policies and programs. Today's discussion, Livable for a Lifetime, is about the necessary services and home elements to allow people to make the choice to remain in their homes throughout their lifetime. Welcome to our guests. I am pleased to be joined today by Todd Hawkins of Builderfish, Elizabeth Swider with Care is There, and Chris Murray with Java. Thank you for joining us today.
Let's cut to the part on creating wealth.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's an element of that in this, right?
Everybody at home wants to know that part. Let's create some wealth.
There is an element of that, both individually and as a community. So I'm just going to throw out some questions. Some of these that we're going to go into depth today talking about, but just to get the discussion rolling, we're going to be talking about whether our communities are set up to support people as we age. We're going to talk about whether it's cost effective for people to be forced to make changes and moves and possibly go into nursing homes, or if there are more cost-effective options for people as they age. We're going to talk about how stepless entries can help not only people in walkers and wheelchairs, but also people with baby strollers and groceries, the elements of universal design and accessibility. And we're going to talk about how all of this relates to smart design and sustainability and creating wealth.
Saving is creating, right?
Right. So all of you, our guests, are experts on these topics and helping people make their home and their life work for them as they age. What we're interested in finding out first is what each of you do and how you were inspired to do that. Chris?
I work with Java, Jefferson Area Board for Aging, and I do business development for them. I find in this nonprofit, I find ways for us to meet our mission, which is to take care of older Americans, and to, I want to say make money, but I should say enhance revenues. And we recycle those revenues back into the community to provide services for those who can't afford them. And then we also, the triple bottom line, the third bottom line is to innovate, is to figure out a way to stay out ahead of the 78 million baby boomers who are turning 65 at the rate of 1 every 8 seconds for the next 15 years. This is a huge problem, and aging in place, what we're talking about right now, is central to figuring that out.
All right. Thank you. Elizabeth.
Thanks. I'm Elizabeth Swider. I'm a certified senior advisor, and I'm the owner of a local company called Care is There. We're geriatric care managers and care coordinators. And our job is to work with people that are experiencing some sort of limitation. It could be that they just can't drive anymore, or they could be having trouble with their vision or having short-term memory loss. And we give them a personal assistant that helps them manage all the different aspects of their life. So we support people aging in place by giving them one person they can turn to help arrange all the services that they need. I'm also the chairwoman of the Aging in Place Business Roundtable from the Charlottesville Regional Chamber of Commerce. We're a group of organizations, local chamber members who are working together to collaborate to make the community more supportive for aging in place. And I'm the founder of a website called sevilleseniors.org, and we're a place where caregivers and care receivers and service providers can interact, share information, and collaborate again to enhance the community. And part of why I was inspired to start Cares there and do the community work that I do is because I'm a baby boomer. I'm at the end of that generation, and I know that as I start to age, I'm probably not going to be able to depend on the government, and I personally don't have any children of my own, so I know that whatever support services I need, I'm going to have to invent in my lifetime. So I feel like there's a lot of services available in the area. It's just that when we get to the point where we need a little bit of help, sometimes you need somebody to help you coordinate all that and make it all happen. So I'm creating my future as well as helping out people that need a little bit of assistance now.
Thank you.
And Elizabeth is being modest. She was just named the Volunteer of the Year by the Charlottesville Chamber, so very well deserved.
True. It's a great community to volunteer in. I highly recommend it. And it's also a good way to learn how to give back now, especially if you know you're probably going to need a little bit of help later on.
And the Aging in Place Business Roundtable is overflowing now.
Yeah, new members every meeting.
We have probably about 50 people attending every month just to know each other and learn about different ways that they can provide services. So, and we encourage guests to come. So people can always be in touch with me or with me through you to find out more about that meeting.
Great. And just so people know who are watching, we will be putting on a variety of resources at the end of the show so that people can find these websites and resources and get in touch with each of the guests as well as other affiliated groups. Todd.
Well, my name is Todd Hawkins, and I get the pleasure of dealing with each of you in different capacities, and I am co-owner along with my general contractor partner of a company called Builderfish. We're a Class A general contractor in Virginia, and we're about to get our license in Maryland. And our mission is helping people stay in their homes for a lifetime, whether it's through remodeling the current home or building a new one. And my partner Jonathan and I have personal experience with not only caring for others, but also circumstances we've encountered in life where it came to, just straight in the face about what an important issue this is, because, and we're going to talk about this, but a lot of people just assume that I'm going to adapt to my house. They don't think of making the house adapt to their needs through any circumstance. So we're really enthusiastic about, I spend most of my time teaching people about universal design, and we are really excited about helping people make these changes so that they can live in their homes as long as they want to.
Great. Thank you. So are our homes and communities set up to support us as we age?
Maybe.
That was putting it there.
It's a very difficult...
Our communities, the way they exist now, and most homes, are they set up?
I can say from residential real estate perspective, no. But I will say that I think it's, especially with the aging of our population, it's beginning to get on localities' radar. And so ADA, which has been around for decades.
Americans with Disabilities Act.
Yeah, and you can speak to this, obviously. That applies to commercial and public spaces. And so it does not apply to residential homes. Well, now I think people are starting to, especially this past summer, the national media really did a number, and across everything, radio, TV, newspaper, most of the major media, NPR, 60 Minutes, you name it, did stories and features introducing people to this concept of aging in place and universal design. So I think it's beginning to get some consumer awareness, but people still are having trouble getting their arms around what it all means for them.
And so for people who may not have thought about it before, I think it's obvious to us working in the field, but what are the barriers that exist right now in the way homes are traditionally built and the way communities are traditionally designed?
Well, you can actually start with the community itself. You know, a 4-lane road with a stoplight that has a 18-second countdown will find an older person in the median when the light turns green. In fact, there was a locality in California, I think near San Diego, where a woman was arrested and given a ticket for not getting across the street fast enough. So in Charlottesville, right outside Java on Hillsdale Drive, for example, Java was helpful in getting medians put in and crosswalks where someone can cross 2 lanes of traffic, can pause in the middle, protected by curbs and plantings, and then go across the next 2 lanes. So it also applies at the community levels. You know, we now have stoplights, pedestrian signs in town that have countdowns, so that if you see you only have 5 seconds to go, you can at least know that you're not going to be caught in the middle of the intersection.
And how about residential homes?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, in the 1800s, homes had wider doorways and hallways and fewer rooms because homes were more multi-generational. Now what you have, since World War II, houses were built up instead of out. You know, the growth of the suburbs, which probably, you know, not only were you trying to put more people under roof of one single home because of growth of families following the decades following World War II, but also, you know, the growth of the suburbs. You were also creating these problems we're talking about now with, you know, congestion. So most people perceive that the majority of our nation's houses were built in the, you know, during the housing boom. But the fact of the matter is that less than 6% of our total residential units have been built since the mid-90s. And the median year built of our houses is 1974. So what does that say about sustainability? Not only conserving personal energy, but also, you know, utilities. Our houses are obsolete in many regards. And so the mission after World War II was getting more people under roof. Life expectancy wasn't what it is now. So now you've got this confluence of factors that's, you know, created a problem that people are starting to address if they want to stay in the home and not, especially, you know, Elizabeth has firsthand experience dealing with people facing the real prospect of early institutionalization just because they cannot stay in their current home and they really don't have anywhere else to go.
And something that we don't often think about is there's a social component too. It used to be that generations stayed together, and as you got older, you could expect that your children were going to take care of you. But now people live all over the country, and you may choose to stay in the community where you built your family and your career and have all your contacts and your social opportunities. But your children may live elsewhere, so that puts us isolated from who would be our traditional caregivers. And something that I see a lot is as people age, they need a little bit of assistance, but we're so individually minded that we're reluctant to accept assistance from the opportunities that are there. So I think we have to start thinking about inside our own heads being willing to open up and allow other people to come into our lives to bring us assistance, because it's easy to get isolated. Even if we're able to still remain in our own home, it's easy to kind of shut those doors, either not be able to go out or not go out, and then not be able to make the contribution to the community we're able to make.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the denial factor, is that if you've lived in a house for 40 years, you're used to it. You're used to having to climb over the curb of the tub to take a bath, but you have to walk up the 4 steps to the outdoor deck in order to get outside. We're simply used to it, and we don't notice it. And so we as human beings generally resist change, generally. And so the notion that we even need to change is a non-starter. Nobody wants to confront their own mortality. Mm-hmm. So this notion of setting up your home so that you acknowledge that you're getting older, this is not something that most people really want to grasp.
Sort of like doing your will. People would accept that it's a good idea, but I don't really want to think about that.
Yeah. And often they think it's a slippery slope, that if I admit I need a little bit of help with this, then people will think that, it's time to move me out of my house, which really isn't the case. Mm-hmm.
But the dilemma is that unlike the insurance industry, which sells very effectively, sells for the disaster, as we age, we don't know what the end game is. We don't know what it's going to be. We don't know whether we're going to be demented, whether we're going to break a hip. We simply don't know, and so it's very difficult to predict and plan for something that you don't know. In addition, you don't want to know it. I don't want to know I'm getting old. So it's a difficult sort of problem. But going to the home itself, earlier I said a slow maybe, are we ready? Is that if we, from age 55 or 60 on, we're living on one level, it tends to enforce a sedentary lifestyle. And that I know a couple in their early 70s, great friends who moved to town. They bought on purpose. They bought a 3-story townhouse, and the kitchen is on the 2nd floor, so that they had to climb steps every day in order to get from the kitchen to the bedroom to the front door. So they were planning exercise in the middle of their day that they couldn't avoid. There may be a time when that's not going to work anymore.
Yeah, there's the problem. If something should happen, and I hate making this sound like inability and disability, but the fact of the matter is life happens.
Yeah.
Go skiing, and twist your knee, and suddenly you cannot use part of the house. And so I think that is, and I think I want to make another point before we go too far down the road. I think all of us would agree that certain levels of assisted care are absolutely necessary, and that we're not anti-nursing home versus one thing or another. I think the point is enabling choice, what's right, and control. What's right for one person is not necessarily for another. And I think the thing we want to avoid is having such a narrow margin for error that if anything happens in your life, and it doesn't matter what your age is, you could be injured in a sports, playing a game or recreation or on the job, and now you cannot use your home to the same degree while you're recuperating. I have had firsthand experience with this with a person who was injured in a car wreck, and if we just didn't happen to have, and it wasn't planned this way, we bought a sleeper sofa because we liked the style of the sofa, and we were able to repurpose a room. But if we didn't have that, we'd have had to find a different place for her to stay. And so sometimes
it's creating options in the house.
It's basically accounting for the most conditions and circumstances so you don't face that prospect of where we go. Because that's the last thing you want to have happen if you're dealing with some sort of issue, is this added stressful burden that we can't stay here.
Having to make a decision at a time that's already stressful.
Yeah. If you're physically recuperating and there's an emotional component to that, and the family is, everybody's off kilter. The last thing you want is the home. Home is where the heart is. And the last thing you want to face is to be forced out the door.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, to Elizabeth's point, the notion of being isolated is if your house is universally accessible. It means that it's also visitable, which means that that anybody of any ability can visit and stay with you for that matter.
Maybe we should define both universal design and visitability before we get too far down the road. People are like, what?
We've talked about some of these barriers, and I think it's anything. Steps might be the obvious thing in a home. But
I'd say the shower, bathing
so many other
yourself,
things, bathing,
is another
location of rooms so that you're not having to go upstairs.
So the first issue to deal with is a 0-step entry.
Or getting to the door.
How do you get from the car to the kitchen, bathroom, bedroom? Start there, and if you solve that problem, you're, what would you say, 75% there?
Well, I would, and I wouldn't, naturally people say, what if I were in a wheelchair? But one of the examples I like to use, what if you were pushing a baby stroller? Pushing it. Would you have to lift it up at any point and carry it? That's a good way to gauge, how you could get to the door. Well, that's the first step, as you said, from parking your vehicle to getting to the door. Could you roll there or roll something there? Or would you have to pick it up?
And I like that example because it shows the lifespan importance of what we're talking about. That it's not end of life thought. It's not a thought for your aging parents.
You don't
It's
need to be
something-
throwing your back out picking up the baby stroller.
Right, it's something we need to think about from cradle to grave, is
Yeah.
how our homes fit us.
And let's go ahead and define universal design real quick, because most people, you may not realize it, but you've probably been using things that are universally designed for decades, and you don't realize it. And so I'll start with a general definition and then apply it to the home, because universal design for the home has really only been around since the late 1990s, when NC State University School Design, I don't want to say codified it, but basically got ideas on paper.
Formalized it.
Right,
And
formalized.
had a center.
But
was based on it.
if you ever shopped at a retail store and walked towards the doors and they opened for you automatically, that's universal design. Electric toothbrush, Velcro, these are examples of products and that are universally designed. So when we say something's universally designed, what we're saying is it's easy to use by most everyone. That adapting it, whatever it happens to be, because a universal design could be a product, a service, a tool. Great Grips kitchen stuff, that was universally designed by a gentleman whose wife had severe arthritis. But something that's used by the most people to the greatest degree with a low probability for error. So usable by most.
Intuitive.
Exactly.
Use
You don't
of it
need an
is
instruction
intuitive.
manual. Just like an automatic door. How hard is that to figure out? You
So
walk
it's-
towards it, it opens up.
It's smart design.
Yeah, so let me give you an example for universal design for the home. A rocker light switch. They also go by paddle light switches, but instead of the flip switch, a rocker switch. Arm loaded boxes, hit it with your elbow. It isn't hard to figure out.
And it's lighted at night
Exactly.
so that you don't have to feel for it.
So basically, I like to always say UD is easy for most people. And what's neat about universal design, even some of the things that have been universally designed, and you see not only has it become preferable in certain circumstances, but also an unintended benefit that people didn't really first see. Like, for instance, closed captioning. That was developed for the hearing impaired. Where is it a great option for anybody? In a noisy airport terminal or in a bar, or a restaurant. And you want to know what's being said, but it's too loud and you can't hear, well, you can read it. So that's an interesting side benefit that I don't know was naturally intended when the developer created it. But universal design for the home not only applies to fixtures and other types of things, but also just methods and applications, like the height, raising and lowering the height of things, and just as we're starting to talk about, getting to the front door and through the front door without, struggle and hassle.
There's a program that was started at the University of Georgia, or maybe it's Georgia Tech, called Easy Living. And what they did was to take the principles of universal design, which is nothing but 8 principles. They're not fixed items, and to reduce it to the absolute minimum. And those are a 0-step entry from the car, a living room, a bathroom, a bedroom, and a kitchen. When I say living room, I mean an activity space on the first floor, period.
Main level.
Main level, yes. So that you can, if your bedroom is on the second floor, if you break a hip, or if you're 30 years old playing lacrosse, you might, and you hurt your knee, you don't have to negotiate the steps. And then there are other niceties like lever doorknobs that you can operate with an elbow or
a cord, or a
closed
rope,
fist.
or a belt.
Yeah. And I think that brings up the sort of what some people think might be the most easily achievable in new building, which is visitability. Yes. Having that one 0-step entrance somewhere, having a bathroom that has a wide enough doorway and maneuverability space for anyone to use.
32-inch doorways on the first floor.
Let's because there is a point of confusion with that. It's 32-inch clearance.
That's true.
And so, because the best thing for you to remember is get a 3.0 door, a 3-foot door. That'll be, because there'll be people say, 2.8, 2.10, and I'm talking builder language. So a 3.0 door means 3 foot even.
Yeah.
So that's.
So that when when the door opens, the edge of the door, which is impinging into the opening, it actually is now 34 inches.
Because you lose a couple inches in the width of the door. Now,
So if every new home was built with a 3.0 door, would that make a difference?
absolutely, you at least get in the door. Then you might have other issues once you get in the door. And I think I want to nip one thing in the bud, because some people might be out there thinking, oh yeah, builder boy, let's redo all the doors. That's going to be an expensive project. You can make a lot of changes and make your home universal just by a trip to the hardware store. There's things called offset or swing away or swing clear door hinges that are basically, it's hard to, I don't have a picture, but it lifts the door completely out of the way. It's just a door hinge. And it's the metal hinge is shaped like this so that it opens the door, it buys you that additional couple inches of getting the door all the way out.
Almost like a double.
Yeah, and you can Google this or whatever your favorite search engine is. Online, offset, some of the brand names are Swing Clear and Swing Away, and you can see pictures. If you click the image search on Google, you can see dozen pictures of what these look like. But it doesn't have to be. I think for people who are like, well, I don't have a whole lot of money, how am I going to do this? Universal design is really an approach more than it is. There's ways to, and that's what's beautiful about universal design, multiple ways to achieve the same thing.
Mm-hmm. So it can be in an expensive high-end home, and it can be in a basic starter home.
Yep. I mean, it's really, I'll put it to you this way. If you're building a new house, doing a lot of things universally doesn't cost a single extra cent. It's just raising the height of outlets and lowering the height of switches.
It's an additional 3% plus or minus in a new house, yet retrofitting an older house can be 20-25%. So it's very efficient if you do it from day one. Well,
it really depends on personal preferences you make. It can get expensive if you want because every company now is making universal design lines, plumbing fixtures, the whole 9 yards. And so you can spend as much money as you want to getting the latest and the greatest. But if you're on a budget, I think there are you get what you pay for in life, and there are certain areas of the house, like the bathroom and the kitchen, that pose more danger than others. And so it totally depends on your circumstance and your particular house, where you splurge versus maybe pick another option. Mm-hmm. But getting back to the thing we were first talking about, getting to the door is your first order of business. And you can speak to how in your counsel with clients, how that is a major, we're not making things up, that's an obstacle.
It's a really big deal. I have a client who lives in a split-level home who feels like she can't go out and get her mail because she has to negotiate a set of stairs to get to her front door, and then another set of stairs to get to the driveway, and a steep driveway to get down to the mailbox where she has fallen before, and now she's concerned about falling again. And she says, the house down the street that is on one level was for sale years ago. I should have moved into that house. And she doesn't want to move away from her neighborhood, but she knows her house doesn't work for her, so she's in a little bit of a quandary, and it absolutely affects her life.
So what are her options?
She can renovate her home. Her home would be one that would be quite expensive to renovate, but that's something that she can do. She can move to another place, again, down the street, or to a place that has more services. What we've done is we go into her home and we assist her. So we bring her things, we visit her, we take her out, and when she goes out, then we're there with her when she's walking down those stairs and she's walking down the driveway. So now she feels secure that she's not going to fall, and she's able to get out into the community. And that's the choice that she's made, that she likes her house, even though it doesn't work for her physically. She likes her neighbors in her neighborhood, so she brings a person in who can navigate that for her so she gets access to the things that she needs. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of different options, and I think people just need to be open to how can I make this work for me? What else is available?
That's why I like Elizabeth's company's name so well. Care is there. I think that is a real, across everything we're talking about, don't feel like your only option is hitting the road. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's staying in the home or you need assisted care, you need some sort of assistance shopping. Mm-hmm. There are people and services that will come to you. And
Services enriched housing, we call it in the business.
and whole communities that are planned for this. So I think the main thing is people just assume I can't do that, or that's no longer
over
possible.
for me.
And really, if you think about it, because the boomers are currently our nation's largest demographic, companies are catering to them. Boomers have changed things about not only their lives, but just our culture and society from the time they hit the scene. And this is the next stage, how they are taking care of themselves. Because I think we've talked about this before. You want to see a boomer's ears shut, start talking about inability. Because boomers are can-do, you're a boomer.
Moi?
Can-do, get it, active people. And so that's why in our business, we don't center the discussion on, you got to prepare for the end. We're talking about convenience and being active. You're in control, living the type of life and lifestyle that you want to.
See, that's it,
living.
right? It's giving you, all these things give you access to the kind of life that you want. It's not necessarily that the building space gives you joy. It's what happens in that space that gives you joy. It's the people that can come into that space to be with you. It's the activities you can do in that space. It's you being able to go out to the people that you love. So I think once we get past kind of the clinical, how is this physically going to work for me? It's really about what kind of life do I want to create, and reaching out and finding all the things that will support that. And it's not just people coming in to help, because frankly, nobody really wants to be helped. Nobody really wants to be, in need. It's being able to make a contribution to somebody else and being willing to have somebody contribute to you. And in that circle, everybody wins. The caregivers win because they know they're making a difference for somebody. The person that's receiving the care is making a contribution to that other person too. So I think when we get ourselves isolated, stuck inside of houses we can't get out of, or a feeling like I have to do everything myself and all the people that I love are gone, when we get isolated, then we start to break down, and that's when we start feeling old.
That's the misnomer about aging in place, is that we think that we want to age in place, stay in our house, regardless of everything.
Do we agree we each dislike that term?
But it doesn't work.
Really
the term that works is aging in community.
Yes.
We want to be able to be able to keep our same bridge club. We want to know where the mayonnaise is
or
at
active
Giant.
in place.
We don't want to be moving.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a reactive term to folks who feel like they have to leave when they age.
The problem is that if you were given the choice of age in place or other, and other generally is an institution of some sort, well, I'd rather live in a barn than in a nursing home or some institutional setting. So, but the data, the statistics on social supports being leading to healthy and effective aging is overwhelming. The old saying that when we're on our deathbed, we don't wish that we'd spent more time in the office. It is absolutely true. It's the relationships we have, it's our family, and our ability to stay in the community where our friends and family live is an absolutely essential piece to this whole mix.
So what do we need to do with our communities to make them support us as we age? What changes do we need to
I think we should, let's define, because we mentioned visitability. I personally believe just that. When I learned about visitability, it was an eye-opener. Visitability, I think, is so key to affordability. And by affordability, I'm kind of using the word in a different way. If you're able to be visited, then you can afford to stay, because you can, not only your mental and emotional well-being, but you can afford to be able to get help, or come and go. So to me, it keeps people in the community. And so I think that's because the converse of that, or the opposite way of looking at it, is if I can't stay in a community, it's going to get expensive having to leave. So that's why I think, and I'm kind of stretching it a little bit here, but visitability is so important. So I want to define what visitability is. Visitability actually is a term that was coined by the English, and that was decades ago. Eleanor Smith, who founded Concrete Change in the Atlanta area, I think her story is so fascinating. She, in the late 80s, started this group, Concrete Change, in Atlanta, Georgia, She has been had been a has been a wheelchair user since childhood, and her group was interested in linking up with affordable housing in the Atlanta area, and they made the point to, I think it was Habitat Housing, I think, is that correct?
I think so.
Basically they were on a campaign to build affordable houses, and she got their ear and said, look, if you're going to build affordable houses, you better make them accessible, or people aren't going to be able to stay the whole time, and they'll have to leave. Plus, you don't want to create affordable houses and then a bunch of shut-ins. So, and how she came to understand visitability as a child was, being in a wheelchair, she couldn't go to a lot of her friends' houses. Her places where she could visit were limited based on whether there was accessibility. And I think the amusing part of her story was that, because she gives the example that, getting ready for prom, the girls had to come to her house, otherwise she couldn't go to anybody else's house because she couldn't get through the door. Well, one of the amusing anecdotes was that she didn't realize meatloaf could be terrible until she was an adult, because her mom made fantastic meatloaf. And it wasn't until she actually visited another person's house later in life that she realized, wow, this meatloaf is awful. And now that's funny, but think about that. If you can't go anywhere and your number of options for socialization are limited, your world is framed by that. You don't know what it's like over there because you can't go over there. So visitability in terms of a community is so super important, not only for just, social well-being, but I think there is a money component to it, because if you can't stay, you got to afford to go someplace else.
Absolutely.
Which is expensive.
Absolutely.
Now, you might want to define what a house in order, I can, but people are probably already sick of hearing me drone on. The minimum requirements for visitability in order to make a home visitable.
Well, it goes back to the easy living standard, which
it's
is
just those three basic things.
zero-step
Go right
entry.
ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The zero-step entrance and the restroom.
At least a half bath on the main, so we're talking main floor, a zero-step entrance that's also flush. I think that's the other, they allow for...
It's a half-inch threshold.
Yeah, half-inch, but that's really...
It's an obstacle.
I say flush because that's ideal. But they allow, so get to the door with 0 steps, and it doesn't have to be the front door. I think a lot of people think front door only. It could be backside or through a garage. Garage is usually the most doable, depending on the topography, especially around here in Central Virginia. So we're talking about main level access with 0 steps and ideally a flush threshold. At least a half bath on the main level, but preferably a full bath. And why? Because you're not staying very long. It's not going to be a very long visit if you can't go to the bathroom. And wider. What am I forgetting?
Bedroom,
Is that it?
bathroom, kitchen, living room.
Yeah, one room
those
that
four
could be
elements
repurposed to be a bedroom if necessary.
One of the things I think needs to be said is that the state this year, actually over the past 3 years, has acknowledged this need for housing that is universally accessible. House Bill 1950, I think it is, just this was passed this year, where you get a $5,000 tax credit or 50% of the value of the work done to make a house visitable or accessible, and so, or a new house, you're allowed this $5,000 tax credit. And
See, there's the creating wealth. We just created wealth for lots of people.
Well, that's
who are planning.
But more importantly, this year, for the first time, this tax credit can go to anybody in the chain, meaning that a builder who proactively builds universal design into the house can take that tax credit. The problem is that only one person in the chain can take it. It's the homeowner or the professional who's doing it. But this has the potential of lessening the barrier, so to speak, for universal features in a home. So
that's something, if someone's shopping for a home, they could ask the builder about that option?
Ask them to do that, and there's $5,000. It's not, in the basic scheme of things, it's a rounding error, but the fact is it is $5,000.
Well, I mean, it's not, I think the main, it's called the Livable Home tax credit. And you can Google that, Livable Home Tax Credit, Virginia, and you'll go right to the site. And it was just passed through the General Assembly unanimously from subcommittee because the money was already appropriated. And so the governor signed it March 22nd. And it's what's currently on the website shows this year's tax year, but this is essentially in effect now. The law goes into effect July 1, but if you're building a house, you'll get the rebate next year. And I think the main thing we need to point out, it's not a tax deduction, it's a credit. A deduction lowers your amount of taxable income, but a credit is dollar for dollar. And so that's got more bang for the buck because it's essentially a rebate. So, so the other part, they raised it from $2,000 to a maximum of $5,000. And as Chris pointed out, they include builders, previously only owners. And so it really is, that is meaningful. It's not a small amount.
No, it's not.
Elizabeth.
Yes.
I want to get back to you and some of the services that you're providing to your clients and have people start thinking about what kind of choices people make as they age and what kind of decision points people come to you with that you're able to assist them with.
Well, almost anything that you need can be brought into your home. And one way I tell people to think about it, if they're being proactive about what to think about next, is if you think about what would happen if I couldn't drive. If I, for some short amount or long period of time, couldn't drive my car, what is it that I would need that I couldn't go out and get? And most of that can be brought to you. So there can be, you can have housekeepers do the housekeeping for you. Companion services can run errands for you and do cooking and that sort of thing. Even skilled nursing facilities or skilled nursing people can be brought into the home. Occupational therapists, bookkeepers. We've had... you can bring a mobile vet out to your house to look after your pets. So really, most anything that you need. And what we find too is if it's a person who, let's say, is having a medical problem, a short term, they had surgery and they need some help just recovering from that, then it's great to know that all these services are available and you can reach out and find them and engage them and they'll come to you. If it's an elderly person that, let's say, is experiencing short-term memory loss and doesn't have a local caregiver in town that can help them on the ground, they have long-distance caregivers that are concerned about them but aren't right there, then geriatric care management companies like myself, some companion agencies will step in and be your person locally who can make all this happen and is a person that your loved one can trust. So it's nice to know you have that one person you can call and say, oh, this is going on, or can have ideas for you about things you may not even be aware are available and bring those to you. So that little test of, what if I couldn't drive, is a good way to just start thinking about, what are some of the things that I think I might need? You can have your groceries delivered. You can have Meals on Wheels will bring in meals, but there's also personal chefs that will come to your house, cook meals for a week, put them in your freezer so that you can, get them out when you want them. So more and more services are being created, and really, basically, whatever you need is out there somewhere.
And I have to put in a plug for Jaba's My Home for Life business that does just that. We have myhomeforlife.org is a web-based business that will connect a senior or anybody actually with the kinds of services that Elizabeth is mentioning. So what we do is we will make the connection, we'll make the phone call, set up the visit. This is a transaction that takes place between the person and the provider. But the beauty of it is that, when the traveling vet shows up, you can be, and it's a My Home for Life vendor, if you will, you can be really sure that the business license is up to date, that their liability insurance is up to date, that if you have a roofer or a plumber, that the employees that are inside the house will have a background check on their employees, that we want to make sure that you're able to connect with a service provider that does exactly what they say they're going to do and do a good job. There's a feedback loop that tells you, that lets us know how the transaction has happened. So
people can, if they've had a problem, they can make that known, and if they have glowing things to say.
But the point is, as Elizabeth is saying, is how can I stay where I want to be whether that's aging in place or in the community or whatever. We baby boomers, as does a 90-year-old, wants to be where they want to be.
And some people want to be in a facility. Assisted living, for example, provides a lot of services that people like.
And socialization.
But there are still some things in assisted living facility that you don't have access to that you can get through the community and will come to the assisted living. So there's all kinds of options that people, often people think either I'm in my home doing what I used to do or I'm in a skilled nursing facility. And that's just not the case anymore. There's a whole range of things available that if you engage the community, you can see what's right for me. If you want to bring something to your home, for example, you can choose how many hours that person is there. What level of care do I want? What fee is right for me? You can choose the things that you want to have. Versus in a facility, they have certain things that they're set up to do that they'll do very well, and then other things need to be brought in. You pay for the things that they provide, whether you need them or not. Often.
And I wanted to bring that up because I think in this discussion, as a nation, we need to be thinking about the cost effectiveness also. I mean, of course, we want to meet people's needs, but we also want to think about, as a nation, our investments, what are our household spending, and how can we make our whole nationwide wallet work better. And so some people may say, oh, services coming to my home, that would be too expensive for me. But I think if people were to look at the comparison between having services come to the home that I'm already living in versus moving somewhere else,
and often
they
what
may be
happens,
surprised.
there's that denial that there's any need, and someone really living in a way that isn't safe for them to live, then they will fall. So there's that critical incident. They fall, go to the hospital, from hospital go to rehab, and then often from there aren't able to go home and then end up in a facility, which is exactly what they didn't want, because in the early going they weren't able to they were denying that they really needed some early assistance.
The age that people enter assisted living facilities is now, it's 82 or thereabouts. They're older and older and frailer for exactly that reason, is trying to put off that decision as long as possible. And the dilemma is that they now, in an assisted living facility, for example, they're essentially buying the worst possible scenario. They're having to pay for it up front whether they need it or not. So this notion of being able to provide a la carte services through home health care or through JABA in case of lower income people through case management, being able to have the services come to your house preemptively is a huge plus. It forestalls this notion of having to go into an assisted living facility. What we're looking for is TLM, the last move. What we'd like to do is to stay where we want to stay as long as possible, and then if we have to move, then that's it.
I'll tell you something that I'll just mention just to let people know. I call it the Jetsons. We are there. The things we saw on popular TV, Star Trek, Star Wars, the Jetsons, the gadgets and stuff, all that stuff exists. So I want to mention home automation just so people interested realize that, first of all, the cost of home automation, and whether you're talking, I'm talking about the whole gamut. Anything you can possibly imagine can be automated, and that technology is available now. So whether you're talking about remote monitoring, alert, just convenience, dealing with utilities, like this is a great thing for people with second homes. You can buzz people in to take care of your property from states away, or adjust the utilities from states away using
medication dispensing.
Medication dispensing, anything, whether it's security or home entertainment, the whole gamut can now be automated. Now, I know, people say that will cost an arm and a leg. Intel and GE are like two of the companies at the forefront of this, and what's happening is increased competition, and especially these large companies with economies of scale are driving down the price. And most of these things a lot of them are sold on a monthly subscription basis. It's sort of almost like your cell phone. You pay for the equipment, and then it's an ongoing subscription service. You'd be surprised, because I will admit that I had the same ideas. Wow, that's going to be expensive. It is not as expensive as you think. And so what are we talking about? We're not talking about an either or this or that. We're talking about, depending on what's right for the person, based on their individual circumstances and, frankly, personal preference, putting together a solution, and it may have a dabble of everything.
And the point is, people need to be thinking about this now, whether you're 82 or whether you're 22. When you're looking at your home and where you're going to be, you should be thinking about these things for ease and convenience.
And when you're making
our
your
builders, I want to ask you, Todd, from a builder's perspective, are builders building with the future in mind? Do you think builders are at the cutting edge where they should be?
Some are.
I think some are, and I think here's what's happening, which is a good thing and a bad thing. New construction is in a depression. And so companies, and we're included, we reinvented our business based on, what are we going to do and what's important to us. And so what's getting all the publicity right now is green construction, green. But, the cool thing about universal design is it includes green. You get lead points for doing universal features. But getting back to your question, builders are going to do whatever consumers demand. And I think what you're starting to see as more people become aware, especially once you start positioning it as convenience, ease of use. Nobody wants to hear about inability or disability. But if you start to talk about things about this just will make your life easier or efficient, that speaks to everybody. Echo boomers, once baby boomers start to die, echo boomers are going to be our millennials. They're now about 33 years old, 18 to 33. They're going to be our next biggest generation. And what do they care about? They're high-tech kids entering their first home buying experience, and they want efficiency, and they want gadgets, and they don't, they also like to take care of their parents. So that, to me, is the future market. Builders are going to react to whatever people want. And I think as a result of the recession, the Great Recession, a lot of companies have either gone under or they're looking to reinvent themselves. And they're looking to new markets, and that's where we're going. I think a lot of the things we're talking about right now are, with each passing month, are going to become more in demand. And why? Because it's convenient. Who wants hassle?
But
Who wants
also
to be
in the
forced
biggest,
to move them?
in the biggest picture, given where healthcare is going, given the demographics, Medicaid is starting to acknowledge that that the current model doesn't work very well, and so we have money follows the person, where Medicaid monies, instead of coming to the facility, can come to the person to use in their own home.
In their own home with community-based services as opposed to an
Community-based services,
institution?
exactly.
Yeah, the bottom line is governments want people to take care of themselves.
Absolutely, and so you have.
But it takes a while for outdated systems to catch up, right?
Well,
and you're saying it is starting?
It is starting, and we have JABA is working on this community living program, the sort of second phase of it, where money is going to where case management is happening in the home instead of the people having to come to a facility. The Affordable Care Act is driving care towards the home instead of it's keeping people out of hospitals and encouraging the system to get people out of hospitals as opposed to doing institutional health care or institutional living. So the government is moving in that direction, and it's very, very heartening to see that. At the same time, that the need is huge that they do that. Yeah. So it's a perfect, it's a win-win.
So we've only got a couple of minutes left, and we've had some great information. I think I'd like to leave the audience with some things to think about. First, what can individuals do, think about, or get involved with, and what can government as well as business do to link these things so that we're moving forward in the future into communities that are better able to support people through our lifespans?
Research.
Yes.
There's information out there, especially on universal design. If you Google universal design, you'll see all kinds of links. And we all, participate in the Livable For Lifetime steering committee. So livableforlifetime.org.
Yes.
Is a great. If you just go to the resources page, boy, there must be 40-some links there. That's a great place to get started learning. And Seville Seniors is another one. Seville Seniors. I'll let you.
Yeah, SevilleSeniors.org is a place where all sorts of different caregiving services are available, and anybody can go browse and see what's available on there. The Aging in Place Business Roundtable does a a speakers bureau where we go out to community organizations and do a free presentation to give you an overview of things to think about with caregiving and how you can get access to those resources. So that's another idea.
And JABA, of course, Jefferson Area Board for Aging has a wonderful website with a huge number of resources on it. And we also have housing. We have 4 housing facilities where people can move in with that are they're age restricted, income restricted, so it is truly affordable housing for seniors. Mm-hmm. We have a project going right now on East Market Street that will, should we get tax credits for it, low-income housing tax credits for the funding of it, we'll be able to provide housing for 27 low to moderate income seniors. So the JABA website, jabacares.org, is a tremendous resource as well.
Right. And I also want to thank the other members of the Livable for Lifetime Steering Committee, which include the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, as well as the UVA Institute on Aging.
The City of Charlottesville,
County of Charlottesville, and County of Albemarle. Thank you. And we all meet monthly to address and work on these kinds of issues and bring more information to the community. So I will be putting information on the websites that we've talked about so people can get some more information and browse those. Thank you so much to our guests. This concludes our session today on Livable for Lifetime. Thank you for joining us. And as part of Piedmont Housing Alliance's continuing series, Building Dreams, Creating Wealth, we'll be addressing other issues such as affordable housing, home ownership, foreclosure prevention, financial literacy, equal housing opportunity. All of our sessions are aired on CPA TV, Comcast Channel 13, and those are Tuesdays at 3 p.m. and Thursdays at 9 p.m., also live streaming at cpatv.org. And if you have any questions about these shows or suggestions for other shows, feel free to contact Piedmont Housing Alliance at info@piedmonthousing.org or 434-817-2436. Thank you.
I'm coming home now. I'm sorry I went away. Every night and day I miss you. Come on home. I'm coming home, baby, now. You know I'm praying every night. Can't hold me back now, alright. I'm pressing on, baby, now. I wanna feel you hold me tight. When I'm in your arms, I'll be high. I'm coming home. I'm coming home now, yeah, yeah, yeah. The road is long, baby, now. Let me hear you say, and I never will go away. Yeah, no, I'm here to stay.